Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, where I've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor Heroes vs Villains episode 15. That's right, we had the pre-merge episode, the merge episode, and the post-merge episode all in the space of 1 week. Now, I'd love to know in the comments below, do you enjoy having 3 episodes a week, or do you like having 1 episode a week? I know for us podcasters, the people who content create and cover the show, a lot of us would prefer it to be once a week, because then we've got a whole week to digest and dissect what happened. But it was great to see these 3 episodes, and Australian Survivor continues to deliver this season. Now, before we get into the top 5 takes here for this episode, please consider subscribing, please consider hitting the like button and putting the notification bell on so you can be informed next time that I put content out there. We've also got Survivor 44 coming out this week. We've got the challenge content for the World Championship coming out in the next week as well, and I will have some more content on the channel covering that. Alright, let's get into takeaway number 1 here for this episode. The Vigilantes assemble back at camp. That's right, you heard it right. Matt did not only betray his OG heroes, but he also goes and steals Nina's name for an alliance. And I thought it was one of the most petty things I've seen in a while. You see this big new alliance, the Vigilantes go on the beach at night after camp and assembling. They go and talk, and it's kind of like a reverse of what we saw in the previous episode, where the likes of Shawnee, George, and Liz and the Spice Girls were left out of a conversation. They're very clearly strategizing, getting together at the beach, because they've now pulled off a great blindside on David, and that lets the others know they are on the outs. And in this new alliance, you've got Haley and you've got Simon, 2 unlikely allies of George, working with this specific team. While they're on the beach there, having a conversation in the hammock, Liz and Shawnee tells us that they are not happy with Flick. They want Flick out next, and this is a conversation that is going to continue into the next day. Liz and Shawnee feels really betrayed on a personal level because Flick betrayed them. They were out there to save Flick in the game. They put their neck on the line and almost broke up their alliance with George to keep her in the game. Liz was willing to play an idol for Flick, and she still betrayed them, showing them that George had the right read on Flick and that she wasn't somebody that could be trusted. She's a flip-flopper in the game. She's too good socially, which gives her options to go wherever she wants in the game. But this time, Shawnee feels like this is something they need to deal with. And she does talk to Flick head on in the next day. It was a very almost uncomfortable conversation to eavesdrop on. You saw Liz and Shawnee telling Flick in that moment that they were not happy about the betrayal and that they took it very personal. They thought that they were going to be friends outside of this game. Now, I'd love to know from you guys, do you believe that you should take something this personal in the game? Should it potentially affect a relationship or a friendship that you could have with someone outside of the game? I'm maybe a little bit more of an old school Survivor fan, and I've always had the belief that, whatever happens out there should not be taken as something personal against you. It is a game at the end of the day, and I would be friends with anyone after it, even if I got blindsided in the most glorious fashion. But I do know that because I've never played the game, it's probably very easy for me to say that I'm not sleeping next to these people trying to keep warm and just fighting for survival each night. I'm probably not talking to them about my life at home, maybe to the way that some of these people are sort of confiding in each other while they're out there struggling together. So it's easy for me to say that, but I do feel like they took it too personal with Flick. I was all good with the move. I'm good that they took her out, but I'm hoping that they can be friends outside of this game, and it's not something that's going to carry on after this show has been finished, because Flick is a great person at the end of the day. Lastly, before we move on from this new Vigilante alliance, another scene that was really interesting to me at the beginning of the episode was where George defended Matt against Sam quite a bit, and I feel like Sam was really annoyed with Matt, and George wanted to show him, hey, you're in a safe place here, you're in the numbers, don't feel guilty about playing the game. But could this potentially spell bad news for Matt later in the game if he did make his way to the end? Would this OG Heroes tribe respect the game that he's playing, or will they also have that personal grudge against Matt at the end? That is something that we need to see play out this season. Now, takeaway number 2, we get the Minority Alliance, like Nina said, having a bit of a pity party for themselves, sitting on the beach by the rocks, and having a conversation about how things change so quickly in the game. They all know that they need to get their hands on an idol. Sean obviously is sitting there knowing that he's got an idol, but he doesn't want to play it until it's the right time for him to do so and for him to make a big move. And he's been holding that secret since the beginning of the game. And I take my hat off to Sean because that gives him options in this game. That gives him an opportunity to decide how and when he will be playing it. Idol is a really great thing for him at the moment. It's not so great for his alliance, who's relying on someone to have one, though. They also talk about the fact that Flick is working on Simon, and we see Flick talking to Simon quite a bit. Obviously, Flick and Simon played together in their previous season. Flick is someone that I don't think really ever had Simon's back in that season, so I don't know how much loyalty there would really be between Flick and Simon within the game of Survivor, but the real person that Simon wants approval of, the real person that Simon loves in this game, and we've heard it now multiple times, is Sean. So I feel like he just wants to be acknowledged by his Survivor idol, and I find it so interesting that Sean is a player that he's got this big view of. Sean played a good game the first time he was out there, but he got outplayed by the other players such as Luke and David, and I always thought Sean had potential in that season, but it's interesting that he sees him as his Survivor idol and also someone he looks up to, which is interesting to me. Now, Simon obviously does feel on the outs with that new alliance that he's got. He knows that when the time comes, he's going to be one of the first people, if not the first person off, because there's no loyalty really to him when it comes to George, and we even see in this episode George doesn't fully trust him, but the thing for Simon at this stage is he needs to stay in the numbers so that he can make a move when the time is right. And I think for Simon's game, he's got to hope that in this next vote that Haley is willing to flip over with him to take out one of the big dogs within the Spice Girls alliance, because they do still have 3 people on the one side. They could jump in there and make it a 5-5 vote, but it also means they need someone else to jump over as well at that spot, which I don't know if they're going to get it. So time may be running out for Simon here, but the one thing I think the Minority Alliance did wrong with Simon, and I didn't get an opportunity to talk about that in the previous top 5 takes, is that they never really included him into any of the votes. We saw that scene when Nino was like, talk to you later. Sean was kind of like, we'll go to the water well, no, you can stay. They were always very brutal with him. He always felt like the stepchild within that alliance, and that is one of the reasons why he turned away from them. It was really bad gameplay to a certain degree. Even if they could just fake the fact that they were letting him in on a plan and then they changed it last minute, at least make him feel like he's a part of that. And that is something that this new alliance is doing very well. George is making sure, and the rest of the alliance is making sure, that Simon is within those meetings before they talk and before they strategize. So hats off to the Vigilante Alliance versus the Minority Alliance at this stage, because that is one of the reasons they've still got Simon in their back pocket. Alright, so I love challenges, and specifically I love immunity challenges when we get to the end game. I know that it's not everybody's cup of tea to watch the challenges, but I really have enjoyed this season because takeaway number 3 is that we have this variation of an oldie when it comes to the immunity challenges. We've seen this so many times play out, but this time they're in the water. They have to hold up their body weight, a certain percentage of their body weight, which obviously makes it very hard for the really big, bulky, and muscly guys who've been out there now for quite a long time. They've lost a lot of that muscle mass and power that they had coming into the game, but they're still being penalized against that body weight that they had coming into the game. So, someone like Sean had to hold up 41 kilograms, which is insane to me, to stay in the challenge. But they have this rope attached to a bucket of water with their body weight percentage, and what I love about it is they only had like a certain section on the rope that they could hold on to, which makes it even harder for them to keep that weight up there. The last bit of variation that I really found interesting was being out in the ocean. They don't really get a full grip on the ground because they're in sand, and it's very unstable when they're having to hold that weight up, which means that it puts so much more pressure on your back and your core when you're trying to keep this weight in the air. And in this challenge, we see that the girls absolutely smash it. Go girl power for this specific episode, because Haley and Liz goes up against Simon in the final 3 stage of this game, and they both end up beating him, putting a showdown on for us between the endurance challenge queen of Survivor, because Haley is an absolute beast when it comes to this. I know Simon likes to call himself the beast. Haley is the true beast when it comes to these types of challenges, and Liz goes head to head with her. and beats her in this challenge, which was unexpected to me. I really thought Hayley would pull through. I know Liz is an Olympic athlete and obviously someone that's got a certain type of determination and grit that would get her to the top of her game, but well done to her. Doing a little dance in the middle of the challenge as well, with Shani telling her to focus. All real fun stuff, and she's going to be a threat for the rest of the season because we know that Australian Survivor loves their endurance challenges and the physical stuff. I don't see too many puzzle immunity challenges for the rest of the season based on how we've seen these challenges play out in the past. All right, takeaway number 4. Flick is well and truly at the bottom. She knows it. She knows she's not in the good graces of the power structure within that Vigilante Alliance. And she knows she needs to find an idol. So she goes out hunting for an idol with her Minority Alliance. She goes and walks straight past an idol in the game. So we know that there is another idol that is planted. The Liz idol that got played must have been replanted in the game for someone to find. And one of the things that I really love about Australian Survivor is that they make it so much harder for people to see these idols. We sometimes forget as Survivor US fans that they've made the game so much more easier over years, and they've basically made it blatantly obvious when there is an idol because they color it in the same color as the tribe colors. So if you're a green tribe, a green satchel. If you're in the blue tribe, it'll be a blue satchel. So it stands out compared to the rest of the nature out there. But in this one, we know that Australian Survivor is not going to make it that easy for them, except for that one time. I will call them out for this, that they gave Daisy an idol and a reward that she won in a box, which was blatantly obvious. So hopefully it doesn't get that easy again. Australian Survivor this season seems like they have tried to tweak a few things, make some of those non-elimination episodes a little bit better, and I do feel like they're listening to the fans because this season has been hitting it out of the park. Okay, so takeaway number 5. The pre-tribal scramble commences, and you have the Vigilante Alliance talking to each other. They have a conversation about who they're going to vote for. They all want to go on Flick here. And I couldn't believe it. Simon is the voice of reason. And he says, we should probably split the vote, right? Because what if they have an idol and they guess correctly? One of us will be going home. And George and Shani is just balls to the wall saying, well, we'll take the shot. It'll probably be either me or Shani if they do vote one of us out. And we'll take that heat because George doesn't trust Simon at this stage. So I'm conflicted because the Survivor strategist in me, the person who would do the numbers, believe you should always cover your bases. You should always have the vote split in case an idol does get played, especially if you've got the numbers. And they had the numbers. They could have put 4 against Flick, 3 against Sean, and then the 4 votes that would have come their way, it would have been a draw. They could have re-voted, and they could have voted out the person that they needed. So I feel like it was a bit of a mistake. I think Simon had a really good point here, but I also understand that George was worried that if a vote was split, it only takes a Hayley or a Simon to change their mind, and then they have a majority vote somewhere else, and they could take a different target out. So I do get both sides of the argument here, and I'm sure fans will debate about this for quite a bit. If you're results driven, if you're results focused, you wouldn't care because at the end of the day, the Vigilante Alliance did get out the person that they wanted in Flick. Also in this time, the Minority Alliance is talking to all of these players, trying to figure out where the vote is going to go. Sean says, if you can figure out where the vote is going to go, have conversations with the people you feel closest with. You see Flick talking to Simon, you see Flick talking to Hayley, and that conversation with Hayley was an interesting one because it felt like such a reverse in power compared to the beginning of the season where Hayley knew she was the only winner that's coming back. She knew she was in trouble and she needed to get close to Flick, and Flick said, this is an alliance with an expiry date on it, but I will work with her for now. And this felt like a complete flip. And Hayley was very reasonable in this moment, saying, hey, I'm sorry, I've just jumped onto this alliance. I can't give information away. This is not the way that I ingratiate myself with this alliance for the long run. And you know, it was sad to see for Flick and for these guys. They tried everything in their power to get information, but this alliance stayed extremely tight-lipped, which made it very hard for Sean to know where to play an idol at the Tribal Council if he so chose to do that. We do see at the Tribal Council that quite a lot of hints were given about the fact that they weren't happy with Flick. You know, Liz and Shani did not hold their punches. JLP picked up that it was very personal. And all of this could have given Sean some sort of information where he may have thought, listen, let me play this idol for Flick. She's clearly under fire right now, and that's probably where the votes are going to go. But I do think, again, that it's so hard to do that in the moment if you're in Sean's shoes, because they could have split the vote. They should have split the vote. And then in that case, he could have gone home, or someone else could have gone home, and he would have wasted his idol. So I do think him holding on to that idol, holding on to his nerve, is a good thing. And it must have been very scary because he's such a big, dominant, physical presence and kind of a leader of the Minority Alliance that he must have thought there was a chance that some of the votes would come his way. So he holds on to the idol. He can still play it at the optimal time. We get the winners confessional from him again in this episode where he says that he came back to win this time and he need to be playing this idol right to get him to the end. So I'm very interested to see what Sean can do for the rest of the season. He's had the best edit out of anyone in that Minority Alliance. So if there is someone rising from the bottom potentially to take this win, I wouldn't fully count Sean out yet, but I'm not too sure that he features in my top 5 any longer for my power rankings. That's it here for this episode. Let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I love reading them. I always try and respond to as many of them as I can. And please keep an eye out for our podcast and live stream later on in this week. We normally do it Thursday evenings at 8:30 p.m. Sydney time, Australian Eastern Standard Time. So if you are awake at that time, jump in, leave some comments. We always interact with the live audience and have a lot of fun with Maki and Kahuna, my 2 co-hosts as well. But for now, grab your torches, head back to camp. I'll catch you guys next time when we talk about episode 16.